The morning started with a chorus of barking and the sharp, hopeful meows of cats echoing through the hallways. The city's flagship animal shelter was already alive by 6:30 a.m. Volunteers in faded t-shirts hustled between kennels, their sneakers squeaking on the concrete. The air was a cocktail of wet fur, bleach, and brewing coffee. Sunlight streamed through wide windows, glinting off metal cages and casting long stripes across the floors. In one corner, a golden retriever puppy spun in circles, chasing its tail. Across the room, an old hound lay curled in a patch of sunlight, his eyes half closed, dreaming of something better. Jessica Carter paused at the entrance, taking it all in. She looked every bit the new volunteer. Hair tucked under a ball cap, jeans, and a shelter-issued blue vest. No one would guess she was actually the CEO of America's largest chain of pet stores. A woman who'd spent her life building a business on the promise of pets are family. She'd written checks, cut ribbons, and posed for magazine covers. But she'd never spent a week inside a shelter. Never seen the struggle up close. That was about to change. She scanned the room, her heart pounding. This wasn't a PR stunt. It was a mission. The shelter had been hammered by negative reviews, online complaints about long waits, animals left for months, rumors of staff burnout, and lost hope. Jessica had read every post. She'd seen the photos of overcrowded kennels, the angry Facebook comments, the desperate pleas for help. She needed to know the truth, and she needed to see it for herself. A volunteer named Mike, his gray beard and gentle eyes giving him the air of a shelter veteran, greeted her. "You must be Jess. First day?" His handshake was firm, his smile genuine but tired. "Yeah," Jessica replied, voice steady. "Ready to get my hands dirty." "Good," Mike said. "We need all the help we can get." Mike led her through the maze of kennels. Dogs of every size and breed pressed their noses to the bars, tails wagging or eyes wary. Cats watched from perches, some bold and meowing, others curled tight in the corners. Jessica noticed the signs of strain everywhere, the overflowing laundry bins, the handwritten notes warning of nervous, go slow, the staff moving quickly but with a heaviness in their step. She met Emily, a college student with bright pink hair and a laugh that made even the shyest kittens relax. Emily was everywhere at once, bottle-feeding a litter of abandoned kittens, coaxing a three-legged terrier out for a walk, updating the shelter's Instagram with hopeful adoption stories. Her energy was infectious, but Jessica could see the fatigue in her eyes. "Some days are harder than others," Emily admitted as she handed Jessica a leash. "But every animal here deserves a shot. Even the tough cases." Jessica's first task was cleaning kennels. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work, scrubbing floors, refilling water bowls, and talking softly to the animals. She learned quickly how to approach a scared dog, how to spot the signs of illness, how to comfort a cat who'd lost its home. She saw the shelter's best and worst, the moments of joy when a family came to adopt, and the heartbreak when another animal was returned. It didn't take long for Jessica to notice the cracks. Supplies were running low. The staff was stretched thin. There was tension in the break room. Whispered arguments about who deserved help and who was too much trouble. She heard stories about funding cuts, about animals waiting months for a home, about volunteers burning out and quitting. But there were also moments of hope. Jessica watched as Mike sat with an anxious pit bull for nearly an hour, just talking and offering treats. She saw Emily spend her lunch break hand-feeding a senior cat with kidney disease. She noticed the way the staff celebrated every adoption, no matter how small. One dog, in particular, caught Jessica's eye. Max was a big, graying mutt with a limp and sad, soulful eyes. His kennel was tucked away at the end of the row, a handwritten sign reading, "Special case, ask staff." Max had been at the shelter for over a year, returned twice by families who couldn't handle his medical needs. He barked at strangers but melted when Emily approached, pressing his head into her hand. "Max is a heartbreaker," Emily said quietly. He's been through a lot. Most people walk right past him. But he's got so much love left to give. Jessica knelt beside Max's kennel, letting him sniff her hand. He wagged his tail once, a slow, hopeful thump. She felt a lump rise in her throat. This was why she'd come. As the day wore on, Jessica rotated through every job, walking dogs, cleaning litter boxes, and helping with intake paperwork. She saw the shelter's triumphs and failures up close. She listened as Mike vented about budget cuts and broken promises from donors. She watched Emily fight for every animal, even when the odds were stacked against them. In the staff room, Jessica overheard a heated debate. Some workers argued for focusing on easy adoptions, puppies, kittens, healthy young animals. Others, like Emily, pushed back. If we don't fight for the tough cases, who will? She demanded. The room went quiet. That night, Jessica lay awake in her small apartment, replaying the day. She thought about Max, about the exhausted volunteers, about the families who walked in full of hope and left in tears. She realized she'd only scratched the surface. There were stories here, stories of heartbreak and hope. Of people giving everything for animals most of the world had forgotten. Jessica knew she couldn't fix everything overnight. But she also knew she couldn't walk away. Tomorrow, she'd dig deeper. She'd talk to more staff, listen to more stories, and try to find a way to help. Because underneath the chaos, the shelter was full of love. And maybe, just maybe, she could help turn that love into something lasting. Stay tuned. The real rescue was only just beginning. At 7 a.m. sharp, the shelter was already humming with energy. Jessica Carter, still just Jess to everyone here, slipped on her volunteer vest and checked the whiteboard in the staff room. Her name was scribbled next to dog walks and feeding West Wing. She grabbed a leash and a bag of kibble, her mind buzzing with everything she'd seen on her first day. The morning air was brisk, barely 55 degrees Fahrenheit. As Jessica stepped outside, she could see her breath mingling with the mist that hung low over the outdoor kennels. Dogs barked and whined, eager for attention. She made her way down the row, pausing at each pen. Some dogs leapt up, tails wagging, while others shrank back, eyes wary. She knelt by Max's kennel. The old dog watched her with those soulful eyes, tail thumping once against the concrete. "Morning, buddy," Jessica whispered, slipping the leash over his head. Max stood slowly, joints stiff, but pressed his head into her hand. She led him out onto the short walking trail behind the shelter. The grass still damp from last night's rain. Max sniffed every inch, pausing to watch a squirrel dart up a tree. For a few minutes, it was just the two of them. The world quiet except for the crunch of gravel beneath their feet. Back inside, the shelter was chaos. Mike was wrestling a nervous German shepherd into a crate for a vet check. Emily was on her knees in the cat room, coaxing a terrified calico out from behind a stack of towels. A new family had arrived, hoping to adopt a puppy. Jessica watched as Emily greeted them with her signature warmth, introducing them to a playful black lab mix named Daisy. But not everyone was so welcoming. In the break room, Jessica overheard a heated conversation between two staffers, Carla and Ben. "We can't keep spending so much time on the hard cases," Carla said, her voice sharp. "Max has been here forever. Every time we focus on him, we lose a chance to get 3 other dogs adopted." Ben shrugged. "Emily's too soft. She'll burn out if she keeps this up." Jessica felt a pang of guilt. She'd seen how much extra time Emily poured into Max's care, special walks, hand feeding, even staying late to give him his medication. But she also understood Carla's frustration. The shelter was packed over 70 dogs and 40 cats in a space built for half that. Every day, they had to make impossible choices. After lunch, Jessica was assigned to intake. A woman arrived, tears streaking her cheeks, clutching a cardboard box. Inside was a tiny kitten, barely a pound, shivering and mewling. Jessica's heart broke as she listened to the woman's story. Her landlord didn't allow pets, she'd tried everything, but she couldn't keep the kitten. Emily swooped in, wrapping the kitten in a towel and whispering soothing words. "We'll take good care of her," she promised. Jessica watched as Emily set up a heating pad and bottle-fed the kitten, her hands gentle and sure. Later that afternoon, Jessica joined Mike for a supply run. They loaded up the shelter's battered van and drove 3 miles to the local pet store. Mike grumbled about the budget. "We're always running short. Food, meds, cleaning supplies, you name it. Donations are down, and grants are harder to get." Jessica made a mental note. She'd never realized how much the shelter depended on the kindness of strangers and how close they were to running out. Back at the shelter, a crisis erupted. Max had stopped eating. Emily found him curled in his kennel, breathing shallowly, eyes dull. She called for help, her voice trembling. Mike rushed in, and together they lifted Max onto a stretcher. Jessica watched, helpless, as they carried him to the exam room. For the next hour, the shelter felt like it was holding its breath. Emily hovered by Max's side, stroking his fur and whispering encouragement. The vet arrived, ran tests, and finally, Max lifted his head, licking Emily's hand. Relief washed through the room. Jessica saw the toll it took on everyone. Emily's hands shook as she cleaned up. Mike slumped in a chair, rubbing his temples. Even Carla, usually so brusque, lingered by Max's kennel, quietly checking his chart. That evening, Jessica joined the staff for a quick meeting. The mood was tense. Carla pushed for focusing on adoptable animals, while Emily pleaded for more time with the tough cases. Mike tried to mediate, but it was clear the staff was divided. Jessica spoke up, her voice steady. "Every animal here deserves a chance. I know it's hard, but we can't give up on the ones who need us most." The room fell silent. Emily flashed her a grateful smile. Carla looked away, but Jessica could see the conflict in her eyes. After the meeting, Jessica helped Emily clean Max's kennel. "You're really good at this," Jessica said quietly. Emily shrugged. I know what it's like to feel unwanted. Max reminds me that everyone deserves a second chance." Jessica nodded, feeling a lump in her throat. She realized she was learning more from these volunteers than she ever had in a boardroom. As the sky darkened and the shelter quieted, Jessica sat outside with Max, watching the stars blink to life. She thought about everything she'd seen, the dedication, the heartbreak, the impossible choices. She knew she couldn't solve every problem, but she could listen. She could care. And maybe, just maybe, she could help change things for the better. Inside, Emily was updating the shelter's social media, posting a photo of Max with the caption, "Still hoping for his forever home." Comments poured in, some hopeful, some heartbreaking. Jessica scrolled through them, realizing how many people were rooting for Max, even from miles away. As she locked up for the night, Jessica felt a new sense of purpose. She wasn't just here to observe. She was here to fight for Max, for Emily, for every animal and every volunteer who refused to give up. Tomorrow, she promised herself, she'd dig even deeper. Because every rescue mattered. And sometimes, the hardest cases were the ones worth fighting for. A hush had fallen over the shelter that morning, as if every animal and every human inside sensed something big was about to happen. Jessica Carter arrived before sunrise, her breath curling in the 45 degrees Fahrenheit air as she unlocked the side door. The shelter was quiet except for the soft whimpers and sleepy meows echoing down the halls. She paused in the entryway, feeling the weight of the previous day, Max's close call, Emily's tears, the tension between Carla and the rest of the team. By 7:15 a.m., the building was buzzing again. Mike was already in the back, prepping food bowls and checking off the morning meds list. Emily arrived with a thermos of coffee, her eyes red but her smile determined. Carla moved briskly through the kennels, clipboard in hand, her lips pressed in a thin line. Jessica slipped into her volunteer vest and headed straight for Max. He was awake, tail thumping weakly against the plastic mat. "Hey, old man," Jessica whispered, kneeling down to scratch behind his ears. Max licked her hand, his gaze full of trust. She felt a surge of protectiveness. This dog had been through enough. Today, she promised herself she'd do more than just watch. The shelter's first visitor was a middle-aged man named Tom, looking to adopt a dog for his daughter. Emily greeted him, her voice warm and steady, and introduced him to Daisy, the black lab mix. As Jessica watched the interaction, she noticed Carla hovering nearby, eyeing Max's kennel with a frown. "Tom, you might want to check out the puppies," Carla said, her tone a little too eager. "They're easier to train and always a hit with kids." Emily shot Carla a look but said nothing. Tom knelt beside Daisy, who wagged her tail and licked his hand. "She's sweet," he said, "but I want a dog who really needs a home." Jessica's heart leapt. She saw Emily's face brighten. "Actually, there's someone I'd love for you to meet," Emily said, glancing at Jessica for approval. Jessica nodded. "Max is a special guy. He's been with us a long time, but he's got a lot of love left." Tom met Max, but the old dog was slow to warm up. He sniffed Tom's hand, then retreated to the back of his kennel. Tom hesitated. "He seems tired." Emily explained Max's story, his age, his medical needs, and the families who'd given up on him. "He just needs someone patient," she said softly. Tom left without making a decision. Carla shook her head as he walked out the door. "We can't afford to waste time on lost causes," she muttered under her breath. Jessica felt a flash of anger, but she kept her cool. Instead, she decided it was time to dig deeper. She spent the next few hours talking to every staff member, listening to their frustrations and hopes. Mike admitted he was exhausted. "I love these animals, Jess, but some days I feel like I'm bailing out a sinking boat with a teaspoon." Carla, for all her brusqueness, cared deeply about the shelter's future. "If we don't focus on the easy adoptions, we'll never keep the lights on," she said. "I wish we could save them all, but we can't." Emily, meanwhile, refused to give up. She spent her breaks researching grants, calling local vets for discounts, and updating Max's adoption profile online. "He deserves a shot," she told Jessica. "They all do." That afternoon, a crisis erupted. Max began coughing, a deep, rattling sound that sent Emily running. Mike joined her, and together they rushed Max to the exam room. Jessica followed, heart pounding. The vet arrived, checked Max's vitals, and delivered the news. Pneumonia. It was serious, but treatable, if they could afford the meds. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "We have to try." Carla hesitated. "We're already over budget this month." Jessica watched the team splinter. Mike argued for treatment. Carla worried about the cost. Emily pleaded for a chance. The room buzzed with tension. That was the moment Jessica made her decision. She stepped forward, her voice clear and steady. "We're treating Max. I'll cover the cost." Everyone stared at her. Emily blinked back tears. Mike nodded in relief. Carla looked away, but Jessica saw the gratitude in her eyes. The vet started Max on antibiotics, and Emily stayed by his side, reading to him from a battered paperback. Jessica sat with them, listening to the soft cadence of Emily's voice and the steady beep of the monitor. As the hours passed, Jessica saw the shelter in a new light. It wasn't just a place for animals. It was a battleground for hope. Every day, the staff fought for every life, even when the odds seemed impossible. She realized how easy it was to judge from the outside, to see only the failures and not the fight. That evening, as the sun dipped below the city skyline, Jessica gathered the staff in the break room. She took a deep breath and revealed her true identity. "I'm Jessica Carter, CEO of Pet Life Stores. I came here undercover because I needed to see what you go through every day. I've seen your dedication, your heartbreak, and your hope. I've seen the cracks in the system. But I've also seen the love that holds it together." The room was silent. Emily's jaw dropped. Carla's eyes widened. Mike let out a low whistle. Jessica continued, "From this day forward, things are going to change. We're investing in more resources, better training, and support for every animal, including the tough cases. And Emily, your fight for Max inspired me. You're getting a promotion, and Max's medical bills are covered." Tears streamed down Emily's face. Mike clapped her on the back. Carla managed a small, genuine smile. Jessica ended with a promise. "No pet left behind. That's our new motto. And I want everyone here to know you matter. What you do matters." As the staff hugged, laughed, and wiped away tears, Jessica felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She'd come to the shelter looking for answers, but she'd found something more: a family, a mission, and a reason to hope. Outside, the stars blinked on. And Max slept soundly, his breathing easier, his future brighter than ever before. The rescue wasn't just Max's. It was everyone's. And it was only the beginning. A week after Jessica Carter revealed her true identity, the shelter felt like a place reborn. The old tension in the air had faded, replaced by something lighter, hope, maybe. Or just the relief of being seen. But for Jessica, the transformation was just beginning. She walked the shelter's halls every morning, her steps purposeful, her eyes softer than they'd been in years. She'd come here as a CEO with a plan. She stayed as someone who'd been changed by a dog named Max and the people who refused to give up on him. The first thing Jessica did was call a staff meeting. She wanted everyone, Mike, Emily, Carla, even the part-time volunteers, to hear her vision. They gathered in the break room, mugs of coffee warming their hands, the sunlight pouring in through the high windows. Jessica stood at the front, her voice steady but full of emotion. "I came here to understand what you go through," she began, glancing at each face in turn. "I saw your exhaustion, your frustration, and your love. I saw how easy it is to lose hope when the odds are stacked against you. But I also saw what happens when you refuse to give up. You saved Max. And in doing so, you reminded me why I started this journey in the first place." Mike nodded, his arms crossed, but his eyes bright. Emily wiped away a tear, her smile shy but proud. Even Carla, who'd always kept her guard up, looked moved. Jessica outlined her plan: more funding for medical care, a new "no pet left behind" policy, and a promise to support the staff not just with words, but with real resources. She announced a partnership with her pet store chain to provide food, supplies, and adoption event sponsorships. She promised regular training, mental health support, and bonuses for staff who went above and beyond. The changes started immediately. The shelter's supply closet, once nearly empty, now overflowed with bags of food and fresh blankets. The medical room was stocked with antibiotics, syringes, and everything Max and his friends might need. Emily was promoted to volunteer coordinator. Her first act was to launch a mentorship program for new volunteers. Carla, after some soul-searching, agreed to lead a new outreach initiative, connecting the shelter with local schools and community groups. Jessica herself dove into the work. She spent hours each day cleaning kennels, walking dogs, and answering phones. She learned the names and quirks of every animal, how Max liked his ears scratched, how Daisy the lab mix barked twice before every meal, how the shy calico cat would only come out for Emily. The staff noticed the change in her. She wasn't just the boss anymore, she was part of the team. The biggest shift, though, was in Jessica's heart. She found herself thinking less about spreadsheets and more about second chances. She stayed late, talking with Mike about his dreams for the shelter, listening to Emily's ideas for social media campaigns, brainstorming with Carla about ways to keep the doors open for every animal, not just the easy cases. One afternoon, a family arrived looking for a dog to adopt. The parents were hesitant, worried about taking on a project. Their daughter, a quiet girl with glasses, wandered the kennels until she found Max. He wagged his tail, slow but steady, and pressed his head against the bars. Emily knelt beside her. "He's special," she whispered. "He just needs someone to believe in him." Jessica watched as the girl sat with Max for nearly an hour, reading to him from a book she'd brought. By the end of the visit, the family was smiling. The parents' fears eased by Emily's gentle encouragement and Max's obvious affection. They filled out the paperwork, promising to give Max the home he deserved. That night, the staff celebrated. Emily baked cookies, Mike brought in sodas, and Carla even cracked a joke. Max's adoption was more than just a victory. It was proof that the shelter's new direction was working. Jessica sat outside with Emily, watching the sunset paint the sky in streaks of orange and pink. "You did this," Jessica said quietly. "You never gave up on him." Emily shook her head. "We all did it. Even you." Jessica smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't known in years. She realized that her time at the shelter had changed her, not just as a leader, but as a person. She'd come here to fix a problem, but she'd found something much bigger, a purpose. The next day, Jessica called a press conference. She stood in front of the shelter, flanked by her staff and a wagging, newly adopted Max. She told the story of her undercover experience, of the challenges and triumphs, of the people who'd inspired her to do better. She announced a new initiative. Every pet adopted from the shelter would come with a starter kit from her stores, and a portion of every sale would go back to support shelters across the country. The story went viral. News crews filmed Max's happy ending, social media exploded with messages of support, and donations poured in from across the country. Volunteers signed up in droves, eager to be part of the shelter's mission. Jessica watched it all with pride, but she never forgot the lessons she'd learned. She made a point to check in with her staff every day, to listen to their concerns, to celebrate their victories. She knew there would be hard days ahead, setbacks and disappointments, but she also knew they could face anything together. In the end, Jessica Carter wasn't just a CEO anymore. She was a rescuer, a mentor, a friend. And as she walked the halls of the shelter, the dogs barking and the cats purring, she knew she'd found her true calling. The shelter was no longer just a place for lost animals. It was a home, a place where hope lived, where second chances were real, and where every life truly mattered. The first morning after Max's adoption, the shelter felt like a different world. Sunlight streamed in through the big front windows, painting golden stripes across the clean tile. The air was crisp, barely 60 degrees Fahrenheit, but inside, warmth radiated from every corner. Jessica Carter, no longer undercover, stood at the entrance and watched as the day began. She saw hope in the way Emily greeted new volunteers, in the way Mike whistled as he prepped breakfast for the cats, and in the way Carla, clipboard in hand, checked off the "No Pet Left Behind" policy with a new sense of pride. But the changes at the shelter weren't just about the mood. They were about action. Jessica had kept her promise. The medical supply closet was stocked, there were new beds in every kennel, and a fresh coat of paint brightened the old walls. The Max's Second Chance Fund, named in honor of the dog who'd inspired it all, now helped cover medical costs for every hard-to-adopt animal. Emily, promoted to volunteer coordinator, had doubled the number of people coming in each week. Carla's outreach program brought in local students, who read to shy dogs and helped socialize kittens. What really made the difference, though, was the ripple effect. Max's adoption story had gone viral. Videos of his journey, from scared, limping senior to beloved family dog, had racked up hundreds of thousands of views on TikTok and YouTube. News crews came to film, and Jessica found herself giving interviews about the shelter's transformation. She always made sure to share the credit. "This isn't just my story. It's Emily's, Mike's, Carla's, and every animal lover who refuses to give up. Donations poured in from across the country. People sent blankets, food, and toys. Others sent letters, some from as far as 2,000 miles away, telling their own rescue stories. One little girl from Nebraska sent her allowance in a hand-decorated envelope, with a note. For a dog like Max. But the biggest change was in Jessica herself. She'd come to the shelter as a businesswoman, determined to fix a broken system. She left as someone who understood the power of compassion, the strength in vulnerability, and the magic that happens when people come together for a cause greater than themselves. One Saturday, the shelter hosted its first Max's Day, a community adoption fair and fundraiser. The parking lot was packed. Kids ran between booths, faces painted like puppies and kittens. Volunteers grilled hot dogs and handed out lemonade. Emily organized a meet and greet with the shelter's longest residents, and Mike gave tours of the new medical wing. Carla led a group of students in making toys for the animals. Jessica moved through the crowd, shaking hands, answering questions, and sharing hugs with families who'd adopted from the shelter. She spotted Max, now wearing a bright red bandana, lounging in the shade with his new family. The little girl who'd fallen in love with him at first sight was reading to him from a picture book, her voice soft and steady. Max's tail thumped against the grass, his eyes shining with contentment. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of pink and gold, Jessica gathered everyone for a short speech. She stood on a makeshift stage, microphone in hand, and looked out at the faces, some familiar, some brand new. "Thank you," she began, her voice thick with emotion. "Not just for being here today, but for believing that every life matters. When I first came to this shelter, I saw heartbreak and struggle, but I also saw hope. I saw people who refused to give up, even when it would have been easier to walk away. I saw the power of second chances." She paused, glancing at Max and his family. "Max taught us all that no one is ever too old, too broken, or too lost to find a home. He reminded us that kindness changes everything. And because of him and because of all of you, this shelter is now a place where every animal gets the chance they deserve." The crowd erupted in applause. Emily hugged Jessica, tears streaming down her cheeks. Mike wiped his eyes and gave Carla a high five. Even the local news anchor looked misty-eyed. As the event wound down, Jessica found a quiet moment to reflect. She sat on the front steps of the shelter, watching the last rays of sunlight fade. She thought about the journey, the doubts, the hard days, and the moments she almost gave up. She thought about Emily's unwavering hope, Mike's steady presence, Carla's tough love, and Max's quiet resilience. She realized that the real rescue wasn't just Max's. It was hers, too. She'd been saved by the shelter as much as she'd helped save it. The next week, Jessica launched a new campaign. Rescue Forward. Every adoption came with a starter kit, a photo of Max, and a handwritten note from a volunteer. She encouraged every adopter to share their own story, to pay kindness forward, and to remember that even the smallest act of compassion could change a life. The shelter's story spread. Other organizations reached out for advice. Volunteers from miles away came to help. The Max Effect became a hashtag, a movement, a reminder that hope is contagious. Jessica made it a point to visit the shelter every week, no matter how busy she got. She'd sit with Emily and Mike, brainstorm with Carla, and spend time with the animals, especially the tough cases. She'd learned that leadership wasn't about giving orders, it was about listening, supporting, and believing in the people around her. And every time she walked through the shelter's doors, she felt the same surge of hope she'd felt the day Max found his forever home. As the video fades out, Jessica looks into the camera, her eyes shining. If you've ever wondered if you can make a difference, let this be your sign. Volunteer. Donate. Adopt. Share your story. Because every act of kindness matters, and together, we can change the world, one rescue at a time. The shelter's lights glow against the night, a beacon of hope for miles around. And somewhere inside, another dog wags his tail, waiting for his own second chance.